introduce this evening's speaker, Debrah A. from Durham, North Carolina. Okay. Hi everyone, my name's Debrah and I'm an alcoholic. How often is that sound going to happen while I talk? You know, Bill Wilson referred to us as a spiritualized society, and it is such an honor to be a part of this community. It is the community that I belong in, that I want to belong in, that I am privileged to belong in. Not only do we have a spiritualized community, we very obviously have an energized community. The lifeblood that runs through the sober alcoholic is a phenomenal thing, because not only is a life saved, but the potential for another life to be saved by the hand of AA being outreached is just an incredible thing. The love here is so direct. So I'm not here to impress you. I am not here to entertain you. I'm here to tell you my story without falling down. Now that I've set the bar where I might be able to reach it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it used to be like, what happened, and what a miracle of a life I have today. I started drinking when I was 10 or 11 years old. I grew up in an alcoholic family, and the only reason that that's important is because I understood from a very early age what alcohol could do to people. I lived in a really frightening, scary, angry house. It was awful, and I was a very, very frightened child, and I knew it was because of alcoholism. I couldn't say the word alcoholic. I didn't have the conceptual understanding of alcoholism. But I understood that my dad was who he was because of that gallon of vodka on the side of the sink and the second gallon underneath. And I from the beginning, knew that I didn't want to be like that. Now, obviously, I stand before you, so things didn't work according to plan. But I never set out to be an alcoholic. I never set out to become the wreck of the person that I became. I never set out to hurt you, but I did all of those things. Because I suffer from the disease of alcoholism. And you know, I know a new freedom and a new happiness. And today I don't regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. But the past wasn't a pretty place. I suffer from alcoholism. So I'll tell you just a few stories about that, but we all have our stories. So I'll just do a little bit of qualifying. But I really like talking about sobriety. I really like talking about what my life has become. I really like talking about hope and the hope that we have for the still suffering alcoholic, because I think that's a pretty incredible thing. So I didn't drink for a while when people around me started to drink, because I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be like my dad, and I didn't want to be like my sister, and I didn't want to be like you. You guys were really a wreck. And so I was the chaser girl for a while. And I would hang out with my friends, and they would drink, and I would get them water when they would drink hard liquor. But that lasted like maybe 2 months because it was boring. And you know, I was a normal person, normal alcoholic. I decided that I was smarter than you and brighter than you and more capable, and I would be able to handle it. Once again, I'm here. It didn't work out according to plan. So I gave up on the chaser girl kind of thing, and I started drinking. I think I was about 11. It was somewhere between the 10 and 11. And from the very beginning, you know, when I drank my first drink, it was like I was home. Alcohol was my first love. Alcohol did for me immediately something that I couldn't do for myself. And I can't tell you why I couldn't do it for myself. All I can tell you is that I couldn't. I don't know why. I had good examples in my life. I had not so good examples in my life, but I was not capable of being okay by my own means. And when I started drinking alcohol, all of a sudden, everything was okay. And the fear was gone, and the insecurity was gone, and the anger was gone, and the blame was gone, and everything was just okay. And I had an affinity for hard liquor. I loved hard liquor. It worked really efficiently. You know, beer took a long time. But I did learn that after you threw up from drinking hard liquor, beer went down real smooth. So I had a space for every kind of alcohol. And I did get into some other substances, but you know what? This is Alcoholics Anonymous, and so I'm not going to talk about those. Because I desperately, desperately need Alcoholics Anonymous to stay exactly what it is today. I am not willing to kill the alcoholics out there by doing it my way. I am not willing to have my version of the 12 steps. I am not willing to change what so freely and blessedly has been given to me. So I'm going to talk to you today about my alcoholism. And I qualify for this program because of the way that I drank, which was without any care and any concern. I did try to control things a little bit. If I only did this and that, then it would work. And if I only did it under this circumstance or that circumstance, then it would work. And again, I stand before you. So none of those things worked out real well. You know, one of the problems that I had was, you know, it talks about in the book that we fail to bring into our minds with sufficient force the memory of what just happened, you know, a week ago or a month ago or the last time that we drank. And that was so me. That was so me, as I would drink and I would do all of these crazy things and I had all of these bad things happen to me, but I never could make the connection between my drinking and everything that was wrecked with my life. It was your fault, or it was my mom's fault, or it was the teacher's fault, or my sister's fault, or my dad's fault, but it was never, ever my drinking. And I think it was never my drinking because that discussion was not allowed on the table. You know, if it got on the table, I might have to do something about it, and I wasn't willing to do that. I drank alcoholically from the moment that I started drinking. I understand that some people are cucumbers that turn into pickles or some sort of vegetable thing. I was not one of those. From the beginning, I didn't drink because I liked how it tasted. I liked what it did for me. Again, alcohol did for me something that I could not do for myself. It made me feel okay. And I chased that. Ever since I discovered that it was there, I chased it and I could not stop chasing it. I would wake up in the morning and the first thing that I would think about is how can I get more into me? How can I get more? There was never a thought in between. Never. You know? And I was, you know, a week ago I went to the beach with my family, and I have a bunch of little kids, which you'll hear about later, and they were eating snacks on the beach, and this poor little ugly little bird kept coming up trying to eat the crumbs, and they would chase him away, and he would keep coming back, and he looked so ugly and so pathetic, and it just so reminded of me and my drinking. And they would cut, you know, they would chase him away, and he'd run away, and then like a few minutes later, he was back, trudging the road. Not of happy destiny, seriously, my kids were there. And he would just keep trying, and you know what, that ugly little bird, he was doing the only thing he knew how to do to get what he needed. That was like he had no options. You know, little did he know that there was like a Chex Mix meeting down the street that he could go to. It was seriously like he was so pathetic. And that's what I was like. I was so hungry. I know that was kind of weird, huh? I'm going to be known as like the Chex Mix speakers now. I was so hungry to be okay. I was so trying to fill myself up to feel okay. And I never could get there. Like, I chased it and I couldn't get there. Although, I tied many good ones on, many, many good ones on. But I never had that sense of release. I never had that sense of peace, and I never had the sense of freedom that I was so desperately hungry for. And if you leave here tonight without hearing anything else from me, please hear this. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I have found every freedom, every blessing, every peace, every ability to be still in God's light and be okay with myself that I was so hungry for out there. So I'm going to tell you just a couple of my war stories, and then we'll move on, just so you get a little bit of a sense of how I drank. I drank whenever I could drink. I didn't have a whole lot of rules, and I stole a lot because, when you're 11, it's hard to go to the neighborhood liquor store and plop down your 20. And so we stole and we connived. I mean, you guys, very few of us drank legally. You guys know how we do this. And we do what we need to do, right? And so, I would break into people's houses just to get their liquor. Like, I wouldn't even take anything else. It was so stupid, I look back on that, I was like, I could have taken some jewelry. I could have taken some money. Like, I was like, nope, give me the hard liquor. That's like all I was going for. And we hung out with people that were way, way older than us and inappropriate to hang out with because they could get us alcohol. And so I drank whenever I could. And by the time I was 13, I was a wreck. And, I wasn't blessed with a lot of blackouts. I had some of those, like, brownouts or grayouts where you come in and out and in and out. And it's like one of those horror movie films where you, like, see these flashes of ugly and scary, and then you don't see anything but noise, and it's like, ah! And then you see it again, and then you don't see it, and then you have this awful sneaking suspicion that the stuff in between was way worse. And you kind of want to know, but you kind of don't, But I did have, so I had a lot of those, and I would wake up and I'd be like, oh my God, what happened? But again, like, when it was time to go out again, I failed to bring into my mind with any sufficient force the memory of what happened the time before. I just couldn't do it. It was always someone else's fault. It was always that boy or those people I hung out with, or that rum wasn't good, or whatever it was. It was never me and the fact that I drank a whole bunch, way, way too much. And I don't know what a normal amount of drinking is for an 11-year-old. Do you? Anyway, I didn't do it, whatever it is. So, I remember distinctly once that I came in from one of these escapades, one of these, like, horror flick escapades, and I still, to this day, don't remember a whole lot of it. But I was covered in blood, and I was covered with bruises and dirt, and it was awful. It was just awful. We were on the road with some friends, and I was such a wreck of an alcoholic. And I remember going into the hotel bathroom and trying to clean the blood off of me and to clean the dirt off and to get okay. I know that you guys know that feeling of trying to get okay by washing it off. And I couldn't get there. And the crazy part of it was that I couldn't ask for help because I might get caught. Like, that's how I thought. Like, I couldn't ask for help and say, please help me, I'm hurt. Please help me, I don't know how to stop, because I might get busted, And that was just the insanity of how I thought. And so much of that insanity just plagued me during my drinking, and it followed me into my sobriety a bit too, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But anyway, I'll tell you my suicide story and my homicide story, and then we'll get on with it. So my suicide story was, the big book talks about that we get to this place with our drinking where we reach this jumping off point where we just can't stand ourselves anymore, and we can't stand and I couldn't, and I hated myself, and I hated what I was doing, and I had so much shame, and I hated you. You guys all, well, maybe not you, because you were stinky and drank like me, but the other people that were normal, I just couldn't stand them. And like, my mother was always like, you should be more like Lisa Larkin. Lisa Larkin was a normie, and I don't understand normal people at all. I understand they exist, they're nice, but I don't get them, and Lisa Larkin was my nemesis, because that's all I hear. Why can't you be more like Lisa Larkin, Lisa Larkin, Lisa Larkin? And I still talk about Lisa Larkin because I have an enduring resentment about it. And Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a profession. I give like professional talks on other subjects and this and that, and I always talk about Lisa Larkin because it's really a resentment. And my mom came to hear one of these talks, and she was like, and so I talked about Lisa Larkin, and instead of like, this was to a few hundred people, not like this, but well, that's a whole separate thing. Please don't talk to me about Lisa Larkin after this. Anyhow, so I'm talking about this and that, and my mom comes up, and does she say, oh, good job, you did such a good job, I'm so proud? No, she's like, oh, let me tell you about Lisa Larkin, you mentioned her, blah, 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 blah. Like, come on. Ugh. Anyway, so I didn't understand these people, and seriously, like, I went to college 2 years sober, I was 2 years sober, and I would watch these girls suck on a beer for 2.5 hours. What is the point of that? Seriously. You guys are funny. Here's to drinking right. Woohoo! Anyway, I mean, I don't understand that. Like, you drink quickly, and you drink for effect. Like, whatever. Lisa Larkins of the world. So my suicide story was I did get to that. I hated Lisa Larkins. I hated you. I hated myself. I thought there was a God, but I didn't think God would have anything to do with a person like me that did the kinds of things that I did. And so I didn't think that there was any hope. I didn't think about the future. I didn't think about having a family or a career. I didn't think about survival. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about tomorrow. I thought about now. How do I feel better now? That's all I could do. And the verve with which I pursued that was quite incredible. And oh my God, I didn't say, okay, sorry. My home group is the Happy Destiny group of Alcoholics Anonymous. Did I say that? I didn't say that. Okay, sorry. Oh, Bill, I'm so sorry. He's going to hear this tape. Okay, it's the Happy Destiny group of Alcoholics Anonymous in Durham, North Carolina. We meet on Tuesday nights at 8 o'clock. Come anytime. All right. And my sobriety date is April 4th, 1983. And on the elevator yesterday, one of you young things, see, I'm a young person with a little age on her. I know. Alcohol. I came into the rooms when I was 15 years old in 10th grade. And I don't think some of us would not have survived to come later. And I was one of those. And so I'll tell you my suicide story. So I was done. I just couldn't stand myself anymore. I couldn't stand the world anymore. So I used to carry this knife around in my purse, which is really funny because I didn't know how to use it. I'm still I can't use a knife. When I need to core an apple, I go to my husband. I'm like, can you help me? So I don't. And I lived in suburbia, so it's not like I needed it for protection. But it was like when I was running with the jocks, I was a jock. When I was with the preps, I was a prep. And when I was with the stoners, I needed a knife. And because it was cool, right? And I had my little macrame purse. Okay, so I wanted to say, sorry, yesterday, one of you young things in the elevator were like, I was born in 1993 or something like that. And I was like, I was an old-timer in 1993. I love this. I love that you're here, okay? I love that you're here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't leave. You're going to have the most amazing life. You have no idea. So I was going to kill myself. I was done. I was going to take my little macrame purse and my knife and slit my wrist. So I asked for a hall pass so I could go to the bathroom and do that. And so I got it. I didn't say that's what I was doing, obviously. So I go down to the bathroom, and I go to take out my knife to slit my wrist and end my life. and I couldn't find it. And what had happened was my mother had taken all the objectionable things out of my purse the night before, which she did quarterly or so. And you know what's really funny is that I didn't think, oh my God, she just saved my life. And in fact, I was sober for several years before that clicked. Because what happened was I flew into this alcoholic rage, and I was like, how dare she go through my things? Doesn't she trust me? And you know, like there wasn't a trustworthy inch on my body. It was like, it's so pathetic. But anyway, so then I was raging and drinking over my rage. And I hung out with people that drank just like me. I got rid of the Lisa Larkins of the world because they did not know how to drink. And I surrounded myself with people like me. And these were people that I cared about to the best of my ability. I mean, I'd send them down the river in a second if I could get a bottle for them. But I did care. And these are the people that once in a while I would say, I'd be honest, by now I was a pathological liar. I would lie whether I needed to lie or not. I mean, it's just what I did to game. But these are the people I would tell the truth to, and I would say, you know, I was thinking of killing myself today, and they would be like, oh, me too, let's go get drunk, you know, because they weren't like, oh, let's go to an AA meeting. And I don't know why you whistled at that, but okay. So I didn't kill myself, and I drank over my rage about that for a while. I know that's a really good thing. And my homicide story is that I was drinking and we were partying one night, and I had a small psychotic break. That happens to us sometimes. And I thought one of my girlfriends was the devil and that it was my duty to kill her. And so, like, some of you can relate, like the ones clapping, me too. And so I don't know how, because I stopped growing when I started drinking, and I'm small, and she was bigger than me, but somehow it was my duty to kill her, so I pinned her down, and I got the biggest butcher knife from the kitchen, and I was going to put it through her. And the only thing that stopped me was that one of my friends, and I think the grace of God, intervened, and I didn't kill her that day. And the reason that's important is because when I put alcohol into my system, when I put one drink of alcohol into my system, I can't predict what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say, how I'm going to behave. The only thing I can pretty much guarantee is that I'm going to do more. All right? That's the only thing. And other than that, I lose complete control. So I didn't kill her, but every time I see the stories on the news today, I know what I'm capable of. I know what I'm capable of as an alcoholic. I also know that what I have today is a daily reprieve from that life, contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. It is not. I am free in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it has a price. And so I'll talk about that in a minute. So I just want to say that some of this craziness followed me into sobriety. Like how we think about alcohol, I don't think about alcohol normally today. Like I can't trust my thinking at all. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I was walking down the streets when I had double-digit sobriety. I think I had about 12 years of sobriety. And I was walking my little pug dog down the street. And I know, pugs rock, huh? And it was a beautiful day in North Carolina, and there was trash on the side of the road, and I said to myself, oh, tisk, tisk, because, I'm sober now and I care. And I'm looking at the trash, and then all of a sudden, I noticed that in the middle of the trash pile, there was one of those small alcohol vodka bottles, and it was broken, but there was still 2 drops in it. And my world stopped. My world stopped, and I said, ooh. And I stopped thinking about the trash, and I stopped thinking about the pug dog, and I stopped thinking about the sunny day, and all I could think about was the vodka in the little bottle that was left there by some fool. And ooh, right? And I don't know about you, but I like filet mignon, but if it was lying on the side of the road, I wouldn't think about eating it. But when it comes to alcohol, I don't react normally at all. And the big book says that sometimes the only thing between me and picking that up is a higher power, that my defense sometimes must come from a higher power. And so that's a part of my story as well. I didn't pick that little vodka bottle up, mostly because it wasn't enough. And I went home and I called my sponsor and I go to my home group and I tell these stories and they laugh at me and I pray about it and I stay sober. And then another one, that's how we do this, right? And then another recent one, this was a couple of years ago, it was the summertime and it was hot. And I was thinking to myself, well, clearly if I pick up a bottle of beer and drink it, that's clearly a relapse. But what if I just fall down and some beer falls in? Like, does that count? And so, like, for me, the next plan would be like, okay, where do I go to, like, the family reunions and picnics and stuff? And I start setting that up because I'm actually scheming in my head. If I happen to be laying in the grass and a bottle tips over, like, do you guys think like this? The Al-Anons are like, no. We do, that's why we're here. So anyway, I can't trust myself. Every time I set out to drink normally, I just failed miserably. It's not in my makeup. It's not who I am. I am an alcoholic pickle, and I will never be able to drink normally. And so what happened was in February of 1983, a friend of mine died in a drunk driving accident, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to stop this. I think I was trying to prove to myself, people were dying, and I think I was trying to prove to myself that I could stop, and I did. And for 6 weeks, I didn't drink or use any other mind-altering thing, and I white-knuckled it, and it was the most miserable time of my life because I had no big book, I had no sponsor, I had no AA, I had no relationship with a God of my understanding, I had no tools to help me to live life on life's terms. So of course it was inevitable that I was going to drink again, and I did. And from there until I came into the rooms of AA, which wasn't a long time, it was just a couple of weeks, but if I was awake, I had something in me because I could no longer stand myself. I could no longer stand you. I could no longer stand my life in any way. And I was done. I was just really done, and I didn't know what else to do. And I remember distinctly not being able to get drunk, but not being able to sober up, and how awful that limbo was of trying and trying and trying and not being able to get there anymore, but not being able to be sober and live on life's terms, and just feeling like there was just no relief anymore, and there was just no peace. And then what happened was that God's light came crashing into my world. And that happened in my story by the group of people that I drank with started to sober up. And one of the girls, there used to be 4 girls that ran together, and one actually did turn out to be just experimenting. And the second one went into treatment, and the third one started going to these AA meetings, and I was like, what are you guys doing? Because we're like 15 and 16 years old, and I didn't want to give up the only thing that did work for me in some way. So I said, what are you doing? And for a while, I drank alone. And, you know, the big book talks about that no matter where we are, you know, if we're in Alaska, we'll find an Eskimo with a bottle. And I did. I found my Eskimos, and I drank with other people. But I was curious to see what it would be like for my dad and for my sister and for you, not for me, but for everyone else. So I went to an AA meeting with my friends. Bless you. And I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in Cleveland, Ohio. Yay, my Cleveland peeps are here. Okay, and I can't, you know, the only thing I can tell you is the speaker's name is Connie. I don't know, I made a lot of stuff up back then. And I didn't listen to a word that she said because I couldn't. I had the attention span of a bug. It's not much better today, but it's a hair better. And I was so restless and irritable and discontent. And I didn't know how to be okay and how to listen. There's a lot of things I didn't know how to do when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. But something happened to me in that meeting as I listened to this story. And what happened was that I sat amongst my people. And somehow, I don't know how, I think it was the grace of God, I knew that I was amongst my people from the very beginning. And you know, God in AA has blessed me with a lot. And I have a profession, and I serve on boards and committees, and, you know, this and that, and blah, blah, blah. And it's all wonderful, and it's all a privilege, but they're not my people. You're my people. And I knew that from the beginning, and I understood that. And at the end of the meeting, we got up and we said the Our Father, and I began to cry. And I couldn't tell you then why I was crying, but I can tell you today. It was because it was the first time in years that I felt any kind of hope whatsoever. And I had my moment of clarity. And when I had my moment of clarity, the hand of AA was there. And one alcoholic reached out to another alcoholic like this. You guys saw me, and you brought me into the fold of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you didn't see a 15-year-old. You didn't see a girl. You didn't see a sloppy, crying, well, maybe you did, person. What you did. What you really saw and what you acted on was seeing another alcoholic who needed this way of life. And you brought me into the fold. And I am so grateful that my moment of clarity came when a time when the hand of AA could be there. Because the hand of AA is not always there. We still have so much to do in this world to make sure that the hand of AA reaches anyone, anywhere who reaches out for help. We have so much to do there. And we have a huge responsibility there. Because you know what? It is amazing to be here together. It's great to go to our home group that has coffee and a big book, and it's so comfortable and it's so safe. And it's so fun to dance together and to hang out and to be sober, isn't it? I mean, seriously. But we have a job to do, which means that making sure that anyone who needs us is there. And when my kids call you, you better make sure that you're there. So I'd like to tell you that I got a sponsor and worked the steps and lived happily ever after, but I don't want to be struck drunk. So what happened was I found the best looking boy in the room, and I made him my higher power, and he was more than happy to 13-step me. And if you're doing that, stop. You just might kill that alcoholic you just saved. And so, you know, for 2 weeks I chased him, and I went to a lot of meetings, and I would hear people talk. In Cleveland, 95% of the meetings are speaker meetings, and they would talk about their drunkalogs, and they would talk about the fear and the desperation and all the things that I experienced, and I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they would sober up, and it would become Snoopy talk. Wah, 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 wah. And I didn't understand what y'all were talking about, and freedom and serenity and comprehending blah, 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 and I didn't get any of that. But I wanted what you had. Because you know what? You said you were me, and I could hear that you were me, but your eyes were clear, and you were laughing, and for the most part, most of you didn't stink. And the laughter around the coffee tables was just amazing, just amazing. And I know he's here today. There was a little guy, Chris B., in the meetings in Cleveland, Ohio, and he sobered up like a year before me, I think, and he was like 12 or 13 or something like that, and he'd be there with his cigarette telling us all what to do. And you know, like we saved each other. We ran to all these meetings, we set them all up, we tore them all down, we, you know, 12-stepped each other, we 13-stepped each other. It was a wreck of a thing, but you know, we got, yeah, see? Cleveland, I want to talk to you later. It was amazing. I was welcomed into the Society of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the only thing is that you were all lying about how long you were sober. Like these people, I've been sober a year and a half. It's like, yeah, I know what you want from me. Because I couldn't comprehend that, right? I just couldn't comprehend staying sober for more than like a couple months. Like even that just seemed so impossible. And then these old timers were walking around and they were mad at us. And they were sober like 20, this is Cleveland, so it was like a heartland of AA, and they were sober 25 and 35 years, and it was incredible. And at first we had these young people, old-timer wars. In the early 80s, there were tons of young people that came in, probably out of the treatment centers. And the old-timers, we would, they'd be like, we drank more, or we spilled more beer on our ties than you ever drank. And we'd be like, well, you're a messy alcoholic. I got it in me, not all me. And yay for drinking again. Okay, no. Drink correctly, no. But here's the thing, is that at the end of the day, no matter how much they complained, they sat us down and they said, listen, kid, and again, they didn't treat us like we were 15 or 16 or whatever. They said, listen, if you want to live, you have to work the 12 steps. And don't louse this thing up. Don't talk in the middle of the meeting. Take the cotton out of your ears, put it in your mouth. Don't louse it up. And you know what those old-timers taught us? They taught us respect for Alcoholics Anonymous. They taught us respect for the history of Alcoholics Anonymous and for the old-timers themselves. And I don't know about you guys, but I wouldn't take an old-timer seat to save my life. They scared me. And the reason they scared me was because I knew they could see right through my silliness, right through it. Anyway, they took us through the steps, and at first I did it my way. Many of us do. For about a year and 2 months, I did it my way. And we are, alcoholics are a funny society. If you tell a cancer patient you're going to die unless you get radiation 3 times a week, they don't sit there and go, well, how about 2? Like on Tuesday and maybe Saturday morning before my favorite show. Like, we are the most belligerent, obnoxious people. Yeah, save me, but do it my way. Okay, that's another one I don't know why you did, but okay. And so I did it my way, and I got to the point where, the time runs out, where you can no longer just take up a seat in Alcoholics Anonymous. You actually have to do something to stay here. And my time came a little bit over a year, and I was hurting, and I was either going to grow or go. I was either going to learn according to how our forefathers, how our founders taught us, or I was going to get drunk. And I sat down with the old-timers that scared me, and they took me through the steps the way they're outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love that you guys clap for that. I just love that. I had, and I started to run with the old-timers, and I had my Big Book old-timer, and I had my Stories old-timer, and I had my Principles old-timer. And my Big Book old-timer told me, read 2 pages of the Big Book every day, not more, not less. Chris, you know who I'm talking about. And he would say, you don't read more because you're not that smart, and you don't read less because you're lazy. And And he'd have me go through the first 164 pages, and then he'd quiz me on it. And he'd be like, okay, what's our code? And I'd be like, I don't know. And I'd go look it up, and love and tolerance is our code. And I wouldn't it wasn't a conversation, it was fear. It's like, oh, love and tolerance, And what's our next function? I have no idea. To grow in understanding and effectiveness. And this is how I learned the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I today think we should do it with the service manual. Yay, yay. So I started learning the Big Book that way, and you know what? I became a more effective alcoholic because the people I was sponsoring, when they actually asked me something, I didn't just make up an answer. I knew where in the book to go to, which is a very good thing. And I started actually doing things, and I learned about things like if you have a resentment, you pray for the person, and you have an inventory step, and all of these things. And I walked through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my life began to change. And I want to talk for a moment about Mel, who was my Principles old-timer, because Mel had I think a 4th or 8th grade education. It was, I think, 4th grade. I think he dropped out in elementary school, and I don't know how old he was. He was like a day older than God. And, and he either had like 25 or 30 some years, depending on whether or not he counted his jail time. And we started hanging out when I had 2 years sober. I was 17, and he was really old. And I didn't know it then because I was so self-absorbed. Everything was about me. But I know now that Mel had lost his wife, and so he was constantly hanging out at the 24-hour clubs and places where he could work with another alcoholic. And he was like, that one needs help. And he started teaching me the principles of AA. Now, Mel was the most brilliant man that I knew. He thought the world was flat. Like, he really, really thought the world was flat. And we got in fights about this. But he was the most brilliant man I ever knew. He taught me more than anyone has ever taught me. And I'm pretty sure I will never learn again the way that Mel taught me. Because he taught me the spiritual principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. He taught me about honesty, unselfishness, purity, and love. He taught me about the steps. He taught me about how to live life sober. And slowly and surely, the things that he taught me became the fabric of my life. And 10 years later, when my best friend Mel died, I got to give his eulogy, and I knew it was okay because he was a part of who I am. He was the best part of who I am. And I hope you all have the experience of having a Mel in your life, but more importantly, I hope you have the privilege of being someone's Mel. The things that worked for me back then work for me today. I was sponsor, I am sponsored, I stay in the middle of the bed of Alcoholics Anonymous. Those that are on the fringes don't stay sober, they eventually fall off. That's what I've seen in my time here. I stay active, I have a home group, people know where I am, and I'm of service in AA. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. In addition to the steps and the traditions and the concepts, 3 things that are very, very important to me in my sobriety is my faith, my belief in a power greater than myself, the insistence that I have that I carry a grateful heart, and service. And I want to talk about those things. My belief in God started by me telling him jokes. I had no personal relationship. I had tried church. I know it works for some. I have great respect for that. It didn't work for me. I didn't know how to talk to God. I certainly didn't know how to listen. So I started just by telling jokes. And that willingness opened up the door for me, and his light came crashing through. And it took a long time for that to develop and to happen. But you guys said, it's a God of your own understanding. You don't have to believe in what I believe. You don't have to believe anything that the books say other than the big book. It is a God of your own understanding. And with that allowance and that tolerance, I was able to begin. And today I have a conscious contact in my life that is just amazing. I don't struggle with my relationship with God anymore. It is with me all of the time. I see God's light in my life all of the time. I live, I breathe, I dance in the sunlight of the Spirit. I don't know why I am so blessed, but I am so grateful that I am. And the best thing that I can do is continue to try to give that away one day at a time, and then it keeps coming back to me. So I want to tell you a little bit about the service part, and I want to tell you a little bit about my sunlight. And my sunlight has to do with my kids. And I realize that when I tell you about my sunlight might chase, you might be like, oh, get me out of this room, I don't like that at all. But, it's just my light. And what I want to say is that if I found my light in AA, you can find yours. It's not because I'm special. It's not because I've done anything amazing. I simply have worked the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life, and I've found the sunlight of the Spirit. And that begins by not drinking. That begins by not having to drink alcohol today. And then everything else flows from there. So about 12 years ago, I got involved in general service. And, you know, general service is not for everyone, and I understand that. If you don't know what general service is, if you don't know what a GSR is, or a DCM, or a delegate, or the General Service Conference, or the General Service Board, find someone that does and ask them about it. If you've never seen a service manual, pick one up. They're purple this year. Come on. It's amazing. The structure of our society is laid out in here. And the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous ensured that this society is always ours. It's always ours. We have to protect it. We have to make sure that we're there for everyone. We have to make sure we don't become something that we're not. And getting involved with general service has just been an amazing, life-defining experience for me. General service isn't for everyone, but service is. We have 3 legacies: recovery, unity, and service. We have 12 steps, 12 traditions, 12 concepts. And if general service isn't your thing, then find what is. Maybe it's corrections, maybe it's CPC, maybe it's going into schools. You know, part of the reason I think I stayed sober was because I had an assistant principal that talked to someone, I think, or just had this spontaneous idea, and he said, stick all those sober kids in a sober homeroom. You know, how brilliant was that? There were like 12 of us, and we were crazy, but we were all sober, and we started each morning together with an old-timer for a teacher. He was also the only reason I passed physics. You know, like, how cool was that? It's like starting sober every day with your people. And so maybe it's going into the schools, maybe it's corrections. It doesn't matter what it is. Just get a job, make a commitment, and keep that commitment. And remember that when you make a commitment, when you are representing AA in any way, you got to show up. It doesn't matter what you feel like. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter if you're feeling the love ya or not. You got to show up. And remember that you represent Alcoholics Anonymous. When you're getting on the elevator and there's 12 people with badges on and there's 2 people that aren't and there's only room for 10, guess who should get on that elevator? You know, remember, we are Alcoholics Anonymous. Show up. And so I'm going to tell you, so I got involved in general service about 12 years ago, and I also bought this little house. And like the day I bought it, Hurricane Dennis came through in North Carolina, and it was raining a lot, and the water came into my house, and I was like, I don't think that's right. And so I called my girlfriend, and I was like, there's water coming in the house, and she was like, did you put a tarp up? I'm like, what's a tarp? And she's like, go get a garbage bag and put it up there. So I did that, and then the next day it didn't rain, so I didn't worry about it. And then, I'm like so alcoholic, right? And it'll just go away. And then a week later, Hurricane Floyd came through, and water came in the house again. And I'm like, oh, that's not right. So I called my girlfriend. I'm like, you can tell I'm a little roofing retarded, right? And so I called her. I'll fast forward. I'm now married to a roofer, and we're on our second roof and 5th kid. And so now that's worth hollering for. So I'm going to tell you that story. So the second time it leaked, she's like, did you put a tarp up? What's a tarp? So I go, you know, and they're like, you have to call a roofer. So I called a roofer, and the roofer came out, and the roofer was really good looking. And so I called my girlfriend, and I'm like, the roofer's really hot. And she's like, are you going to hire him? I'm like, of course. You know, right, ladies? So I was going to hire the hot roofer, and then one of you gave advice, and you're really not supposed to do that unless it's about the steps. And you said, you can't hire the roofer just because he's the hot roofer. You need to get estimates. Like, what's an estimate? And so I got another estimate, and the not hot roofer was cheaper, so I had to hire him. And so I hired the not hot roofer, and he came like 5 times, and he couldn't fix it, and he'd come back, and it would rain, the water would come in, and he'd come back, and it would rain, and the water would come in. And I saw the not hot roofer so much that his wife thought he was having an affair with me. And I didn't want to have an affair with the not hot roofer. I wanted to have an affair with the hot roofer. So I fired the not hot roofer, And it was destiny. He couldn't fix the roof. And what could the girl do but call the hot roofer? So I called him, and then he comes out, he's all cocky. He's like, ugh. And then I was a DCM at the time. No, what was I? I was like an alternate DCM, I think, or GSR. And there was a district event the day that he was going to fix the roof. And he's like, you don't have to be there. I'm like, oh, yes, I do. And so, but the district event was like an hour away. And if you have a commitment, you keep it. So what's a girl to do but drive back and forth 4 or 5 times? So she could keep her service commitment, but also see the hot roofer. And so I did that, and that was a really good day. And then he fixed it, and it was fixed. Like the first time I was like, oh, this really sucks. But he had said something about the gutter, so I was like, so I call him back. I'm like, didn't you say something about the gutter? I could care less about the gutter. And he's like, yeah, I'll swing by sometime and do that. When would you be doing that? Oh, you don't have to be there. Yes, I do. And so he comes by to fix the gutter, and then I realized, this is a really small house, and there's only so many roofing jobs, so I better do something. So after he finished the job, I was like, do you ever date your clients, or is it a conflict of interest? Like the things we learn to do in AA, right? And so he's like, well, sometimes it's a conflict of interest. And he said, but I'll take your number. And I was like, he has my number. He knows where I live. It's like really awkward. So, I'm like blushing and all that stuff. So he leaves and he waits like 2 or 3 days proper until I'm not embarrassed anymore. And then he called me and asked me out properly. Yeah, I know, aw. And then, so now I'm going to tell you, so then we got married and started having babies. And I have 5 kids. And I know, woo! So I have 5 kids because I do everything alcoholically. I know where you guys are going with that. And so I want to tell you about them real quick. So the hot roofer came with 1 kid, and he's a great kid, and he's 17 now. And it's a privilege to have him in my life. And it's a huge privilege for me to be able to say that. I'm honored to be his stepmother, and I love him. And he came into my life when he was 6, and he's a good kid. He's a really good kid. It's good that God makes them teenagers before they leave, because then you're willing to let them leave. But he is a good kid. So that was number 1. So then after we got married, about a year later, I gave birth to our first biological, Noah. And Noah was what convinced me that I was not in the wrong line anymore. Because you see, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was broken. I felt so broken. And that feeling of being broken followed me into the rooms. And I know there are people out there today that are sober in AA that feel broken. And it took me a long time in AA to realize that I'm not broken. I'm an alcoholic. And those bad things, they happened to me because I drank too much, not because I'm broken. And Noah was born, and I got the privilege of falling in love every single day, over and over and over again. And God said to me, here he is, take good care. And I could no longer deny God's love in my life. I could no longer deny God's privilege and blessings in my life. And not only was I not in the wrong line, I was in the line where God handed out golden candy every day. And so that was Noah. And Noah was my DCM baby. And I started having babies like every time I was elected to a new general service position. Like, they would be born the following fall, and you guys started saying, like, what are you guys celebrating when you get elected? And so Noah was my DCM baby, and then Max came along after I was elected the area secretary. And Max was the area secretary baby. And the glee that I can't tell you what it feels like to dance with my children, but I do all the time. And the glee was just exponential. And of course, I'm an alcoholic, so if this is great, and then the third one was like amazing, what do? You have more, right? So I started campaigning for more, and my husband, who's not one of us, was like, no, this is really good. You know, he had said after, no, we have 2 boys, this is good, and then he said, okay, we can have one more, and then I had Max, and he's the Area's 51 secretary baby, and then he's like, now we have 3 babies, and that's really enough, and I'm like, why? And so then I had to write an inventory on it and talk to my sponsor, and big resentment, I love you, but, you know. And so I was working on that, and then what happened was my sister, who was one of us, my sister was 15 months older than me, and she never had her moment of clarity during a time where the hand of AA could be there. And I know she tried. She would call me and she would say, I want to take that step where you write down everyone you're mad at. And I would say, you might want to stop drinking first. And she never made it past 90 days. I found some chips in her drawer after she died. But what happened was that she did die. She overdosed accidentally. And they didn't find her for 5 days. And I say that not because it's a gruesome story. It is a gruesome story. But I say that because that's what happens to us when we drink. We drink ourselves onto these islands because we're so toxic to be around. It's so hard to be around us. We're awful for the most part. We're angry, rageful alcoholics. And no one could be around her. And I don't know about you guys, but if I'm gone for 5 minutes, people come looking for me, you know? And what a privilege. The only difference between her and me is Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the only difference. And she died drunk. And she had an 18-month-old little girl who she locked in the back room when she drank to keep her safe. And that little girl almost died, but she didn't. And so now we have 4. So now I have a princess and some pink and purple in my life. And the hot roofer's like, I don't know what to do with all the hair and the whining. and our journey continues. So then he's like, now we have 4. It's really enough. And I'm like, really? And, no, at this point, too, I was feeling like, okay, maybe this is enough. But then you all elected me alternate delegate. And so 9 months later, baby Chance was born. And baby Chance, for me, was like God blew me a kiss and whispered, here's one more. And he is such a blessing in my life. And you know, my father died drunk too. And he had 2 months of his life where he didn't drink because he was drunk, he fell down, he had a brain bleed. And he couldn't drink, so he had to force sobriety. And you know, during those 2 months, we were friends. Because sober alcoholics are pretty cool people. And I want to give that to my kids over and over and over and over again. And so I serve. And I stay in the middle of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And the same things that worked for me in the beginning, having a home group, being sponsored, sponsoring people, working the 12 steps, maintaining a relationship with a higher power, and being of service is how I stay sober today. And I just want to say one word in closing about being involved in general service. I am currently the sitting delegate of North Carolina. I'm the delegate to the General Service Conference. Serving as delegate has been one of the most amazing, life-defining privileges that I've had. When I was here for my first General Service Conference, I sat on the bleachers outside looking at Times Square, crying with the immense responsibility that I had to serve the society, to be a part of the voice of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am so grateful that I've had this opportunity. And the thing is that we all have the opportunity to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous and to be a part of that voice, because it is our society. It's a spiritualized community that we're a part of. And I'm so very grateful to have had the opportunity to serve. In the 12 concepts, the 9th concept talks about leadership. It talks about tolerance, flexibility, responsibility, and vision. Vision for the immediate future and vision for the far future. These are the principles that service has taught me. It's made me a better wife, a better mother, a better daughter, a better sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the host committee for allowing me to speak and share my story. From the little bird, the ugly bird that didn't know anything better than to just keep doing the same futile thing over and over and over again, I'm able to come tell you about the hope and the sunlight in my life. Surely I'm going to meet some of you as we trudge the road of happy destiny and dance in the sunlight of the Spirit together. Thank you.
Debrah, thank you so much.